I used to go heavily against coffee, but coffee is life and coffee is wealth, and if you use it the right way, it will help you. So today we're gonna learn how is the Nescafe coffee made in factories. Before we begin, a quick note that you can suggest a video to react on via Super Chat. Super thanks for clicking the join button here on YouTube.
Every day, around 2.4 billion cups of coffee is consumed worldwide. To meet this high demand, millions of people harvest tons of coffee beans. But how are 175,000 jars of coffee?
I do not like the Nescafe coffee, but I have to admit that it's just one of the few coffees that I can feel the effects of it, but I still don't like it. Anyway, I personally drink coffee because I like the taste.
Produced every day. Let's visit the Nescafe factory to discover how one of the most popular beverages in the world is made. Coffee is the second most consumed beverage in the world after water.
You can subscribe to this guy
by a
in the
shepherd
meantime.
who noticed that his goats became more active after eating certain beans. Coffee has been cultivated for over 1,000 years and is now produced in more than 60 countries around the world.
For those who don't know how coffee works, it simply blocks the adenosine receptors in your brain and you do not feel as tired as you probably really are. But when your coffee starts to, let's say, expire from your system, it leaves your system, then you're gonna feel the coffee crush. Now let's get back.
The history of Nescafe dates back to the early 20th century, when Swiss chemist Max Morgenthaler began working on a way to produce soluble coffee. In 1930, Nestle acquired the rights to Morgenthaler's patent and began producing and marketing soluble coffee under the Nescafe brand. The company
I was always thinking that Nescafe is something like a 30-40 years old brand or something like that.
Invested heavily in advertising and promotion, and Nescafe quickly became a leading brand in the coffee market. During World War II, Nescafe became a staple for the US troops and the Allied forces as it was easy to transport and prepare in the battlefield.
That makes a lot of sense that it's gonna be prepared for the people on the battlefield. But nowadays I would say that the people that deserve this hot beverage are the parents and the shift workers. Those are the true heroes of our humanity right now, and they deserve to drink some coffee.
After the war, Nescafe became a popular product worldwide, and Nestle continued to innovate in the production and packaging of soluble coffee. The flavor of coffee depends on the region where it is cultivated and the roasting and blending methods used by the producers.
I don't know if it's gonna be mentioned in this video, but if you guys don't know yet, the most expensive coffee made in the world is actually eaten by an animal. The coffee beans are eaten by an animal and then pooped, and since they ferment in the stomach of this animal, which I do not remember what it is called, the coffee beans get a specific taste, fermented taste, so after that they get baked and so on and get to your cup, but on a really expensive price.
Brazil is the largest coffee producer in the world, accounting for over 35% of coffee production. Coffee grows in the form of flowers, and 9 months later the buds become grape-sized berries.
9 months.
Coffee is harvested from the coffee plants once it is fully ripe, which can be identified by its intense red color. From flowering to harvest, it usually takes between 6 and 9 months. Harvesters collect the ripe berries while leaving the green ones to ripen further. They return to collect the berries from the same plant as they mature.
I need to give another 20 cents, my 2 cents or whatever cents on this, is that since coffee is almost always, maybe even always hand-picked, it should cost more because the people that produce the coffee are putting so much work in and they are getting almost no back pay. So coffee on the end should rise its price and then the money should flow back to the producers. Hopefully, but this is not really happening. But mark my words, someday in the USA, a cup of coffee will be 20 to 50 bucks. Mark my words.
Mature. Harvesters try to ensure that there are no more than 2 green berries for every 100 leaves they collect. The harvested berries are collected in sacks and loaded into trucks. Each sack contains about 2 kilograms of coffee beans, enough to prepare around 200 cups.
It looks like 50.
Harvesting coffee by hand is an exhausting job, so some coffee plantations have turned to machines like the 5-meter tall harvester shown, which can do the work of 100 people.
Alright, I do not know how do these work. Are they not damaging the plants? But every producer should get one of those. There was an interview with a World War II survivor that was actually a gardener, and he said that the best invention for the humanity are machines that can harvest plants.
As it moves along a row of trees, the machine vibrates rods inside it to shake the berries from the branches. The fresher the berry, the better its flavor. The berries collected in the morning are stored in a wet mill, ready for processing in the afternoon. In the wet mill, water channels wash the berries and drop them into a screw auger, which loads them into a deep pulper to separate the outer skin and fruit.
These water machines in a lot of cases use rainwater, which is not very clean, but who cares?
A rotating drum presses the berries against the wall of the depulper, squeezing out the beans. From the depulper, the beans travel through water channels to two enormous rotating cylinders, where they are sieved to separate them from the green hard berries that have passed through the depulper. The beans are then bathed in more water to extract a thick sugary substance. Next, they are spread out on a
thick sugary substance? I didn't even know there is such. So what is done with it?
Cement patio to dry for 4 days, with workers raking the beans to dry them in the sun. Once dried, the beans go through a huller, which separates the husk from the bean. The dried beans are then sorted by weight into 3 categories on an oscillating table. The beans in each category are poured into bags, each weighing exactly 69 kilograms before they are sent to coffee processing plants.
There is nothing special about 69 kilograms, perhaps.
The bags are sewn shut and stacked for shipment. But how are these...
Wait, when was the drying process? Was it just before they put them in the bags? Because just putting them on the ground, leaving them on the sun, at least they didn't explain how long, what temperature, blah blah blah.
Coffee beans turned into one of the world's most popular beverages. Every year, 35 million tons of freshly harvested fruits arrive at plants like this one of the largest soluble coffee plants in the world. This is the Nescafe factory, where 890 people work, producing soluble coffee.
I hope you managed to sell these jars. How much do they cost in your country? One of these jars depends quite a lot on if it's Christmas time, if it's bundled with something between different shops, but here in Bulgaria, one of these costs between $5 to $10. It totally varies so much, so must always search for the discounts.
Every day, 170 tons of coffee beans are delivered from South America to this instant coffee factory. Up to 560 tons are stored in this enormous silo. Each day, 1,200 sacks of raw materials enter this plant. The process begins with sampling, which involves poking each bag to obtain a coffee sample.
Respect to every human being who works in those factories, bringing us that hot cup of coffee.
The Nescafe factory uses 2 types of coffee, the Arabica variety and the Robusta. The Arabica species produces a fine and aromatic coffee, while the Robusta is known for its strong body and intense flavor. Once the batch is approved, it enters the production line. The coffee passes through a sieve that removes any larger...
I entered the world of coffee a little bit before my son was born, more than 3 years ago. And I always thought about the word Robusta, and for me as a Bulgarian, it just sounded like something related to robots.
Residues that the bag may contain. In the cleaning area, the beans go through a machine with different sieves that eliminate impurities and make the final selection. Once cleaned, they are sent to silos identified by variety and type, specifically for the production process of soluble coffee. Next is the roasting phase. The beans are placed in a roaster to develop their aroma, color, and flavor. The beans are roasted at 210 degrees Celsius. By heating the beans to 210 degrees for 12 minutes, the starches they contain turn into sugars, and the aromatic
Listen to this carefully, this is the science part.
Compounds that give coffee its flavor are released. The roasting process also begins to burn off the caffeine. The longer the roasting time, the more caffeine is lost. The beans are constantly stirred to ensure even roasting without burning. The roasted beans then enter an industrial mill where they are ground into coarse powder. The roasted and ground beans are transported to this.
If you guys don't know, when you open your jar of coffee, or if you just do it yourself at home, the caffeine is gonna be expiring, so you must always keep the lid closed.
Section of the plant, where they are mixed with hot water in a process known as extraction. When the hot water comes into contact with the coffee, it extracts its flavors, aromas, and properties. The coffee is heated until it condenses into an extract that is spread on a conveyor belt, taking it to the next station, the freezing room. Every hour, 30,000 liters of coffee travel through the heated pipes of the tower. Heated to 70 degrees Celsius, the water evaporates and is extracted through the siphon. To remove the water, the freeze-drying method can be used. The coffee infusion is frozen at about -50 degrees Celsius.
Freeze drying. There was a word for this, but I forgot it. I studied it in my education. Anyway, from this blend that you saw in there, you can make candy as well.
Causing a thin surface to form that can then be broken into pieces and subjected to a vacuum. It is a process characterized by its ability to preserve the flavor of the coffee. Workers have to wear thermal clothing to protect themselves from the Arctic temperatures of -50 degrees Celsius. As the liquid coffee advances along the conveyor belt, it receives a blast of cold air, solidifying into an 8mm thick sheet of frozen coffee. The granules then exit the freezer in shallow trays, each containing 15 kilograms, enough for 75 jars. They are directed into a sluice and introduced into a gigantic vacuum chamber, where all the air has been removed.
It's
mesmerizing.
mesmerizing.
Enter the drying chamber. The dryer is heated, melting the ice in the granules. However, in the vacuum, the ice turns immediately into gas without passing through a liquid phase. This process is called sublimation.
Yes, thank you, sublimation. How can I forget it? Anyway.
Once the water is removed, the coffee powder reaches the filling machine. Hundreds of glass jars are introduced into a conveyor belt and filled in less than a second. This machine fills 280 jars per minute, taking more than 11 hours to fill today's batch of 175,000 jars. The coffee is vacuum packed to preserve its quality for 24 months. Labels are placed on the jars and they are wrapped in groups of 6. From the factory, Nescafe jars arrive at supermarket shelves. If you enjoyed learning about the coffee making process...
Yes, how I enjoyed it. It was an amazing process and I wanna see more. I wanna see how do other factories make their own coffee and wanna know how many coffee cups do you guys drink. Man, today my English sucks. Now, subscribe and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.